Deep in the frozen wilderness where the mountains met endless pine forests, a solitary homesteader discovered an extraordinary method to conquer the merciless winter nights. While his fellow frontiersmen shuddered beneath piles of wool blankets, constantly rising to stoke their dying fires every 90 minutes, this resourceful settler remained wrapped in luxurious, uninterrupted warmth throughout the darkness. His secret lay hidden beneath the rough timber planks of his sleeping platform, a heating system so revolutionary that neighboring families initially regarded it with suspicion and ridicule. They whispered it was peculiar, imported from distant lands, possibly hazardous to construct inside a dwelling. Yet this underground heating chamber represented engineering wisdom accumulated over millennia, proven vastly superior in fuel efficiency, and remarkably more intelligent than any warming apparatus their isolated community had previously encountered. The foundation of this incredible system traced back to the ancient Kang platforms of northeastern Asia, colossal heated sleeping structures that families across frigid provinces had perfected through countless generations. This particular homesteader's bold choice to reconstruct such a mechanism beneath his frontier bunk would enable him to maintain toasty comfort through 12 continuous hours of darkness, all while consuming barely 40% of the firewood his neighbors desperately burned just to prevent frostbite. If you find these vanishing frontier innovations as fascinating as we do, please hit that subscribe button right now. These remarkable engineering achievements are slowly fading from collective memory, and your subscription helps preserve these invaluable historical lessons for future generations, while guaranteeing you'll catch every upcoming story we uncover. Throughout the late 1800s, pioneers establishing homesteads across the frigid northern territories wrestled with an unforgiving reality. Constructing adequate shelter meant hastily assembling log structures using unseasoned timber, creating dwellings riddled with drafts through inadequately chinked gaps, supported by primitive stone fireplaces that struggled to distribute heat evenly. The standard cast iron heating stoves available to settlers devoured enormous quantities of split wood, yet produced frustratingly inconsistent temperatures inside cabins, blazing intensely when freshly fueled, then plummeting toward freezing as flames diminished overnight. Most frontier families exhausted multiple cords of laboriously chopped firewood during each brutal season, and despite such tremendous effort, still endured countless nights huddled and shivering beneath every available covering. However, the homesteader central to this account, whose actual identity has dissolved into history, though his journals and settlement records carefully preserved his methods, possessed unique knowledge acquired years earlier during an extended residence among communities in the far northeastern reaches of the Asian continent. He had traveled there as part of a commercial expedition, spending multiple winters observing daily life in regions where temperatures regularly descended to bone-chilling extremes. What astounded him most profoundly was witnessing households maintaining comfortable warmth throughout expansive dwellings using remarkably modest fuel consumption. Where American frontier families required massive wood piles just to survive winter, these Asian communities thrived on stockpiles half that size, and their sleeping platforms radiated such persistent heat that even during the harshest blizzards, occupants rested in genuine comfort without layering excessive bedding. The ingenious solution these families employed was the Kang, an imposing platform structure constructed from fired bricks, quarried stone, or densely compacted clay mixtures, designed hollow throughout its interior with intricate smoke passages snaking beneath the sleeping surface. Rather than permitting valuable heat energy to escape wastefully straight up through chimney flues, exhaust gases from cooking or heating fires were intelligently routed through these internal labyrinth channels, thoroughly saturating the entire brick mass with accumulated thermal energy. The platform would absorb warmth gradually throughout the evening, then sustain that collected heat for extended periods, radiating gentle, steady warmth throughout the night. Hours after the last ember cooled, the sleeping surface remained pleasantly warm to the touch, providing continuous comfort that amazed the visiting American settler. In those severe northeastern provinces where winters imposed brutal conditions testing human endurance, households relied upon these Kang systems not merely for pleasant comfort, but as essential survival technology preventing hypothermia and death. During the most savage cold snaps, the Kang represented far more than luxury. It embodied generations of accumulated engineering refinement. Master craftsmen had methodically perfected every detail of flue channel arrangement to maximize heat retention capacity, ensure smooth airflow circulation, and guarantee safe venting of combustion byproducts. These elevated platforms naturally became the focal center of family existence, serving simultaneously as sleeping quarters, sitting areas for socializing, dining surfaces for shared meals, and work benches for repairing tools and equipment, all bathed in radiant warmth rising from below. When our homesteader finally established his claim on a remote parcel of wilderness territory, he instantly recognized the climate's striking parallels to those distant lands he'd studied. The same arid atmosphere, the identical penetrating cold capable of descending far below zero on thermometers, and forests requiring exhausting manual labor to convert into stacked firewood. Rather than mimicking the conventional methods employed by surrounding settlers with their inefficient iron stoves, he committed to constructing a heating apparatus directly inspired by the Kang principles he'd witnessed functioning so magnificently across the ocean. However, unlike the sprawling full-room platforms typical of Asian households, he needed to adapt the concept for his modest, roughly built cabin environment. His solution was developing a condensed version specifically sized to nestle precisely beneath his elevated sleeping bunk. He excavated a measured depression into the packed earth floor, carefully lined this cavity with clay bricks arranged in precise patterns, then erected a sturdy raised platform structure featuring a sophisticated hollow interior network. A compact firebox, positioned strategically outside the immediate sleeping zone, fed superheated combustion gases into an elaborate system of interconnected channels running beneath the platform's surface. These smoke passages then connected to a short exit flue that released spent gases cleanly into the outdoor atmosphere, preventing any accumulation of dangerous fumes inside the living space. The fundamental principle driving this system's remarkable efficiency was capturing nearly complete thermal energy from each fire, instead of allowing precious heat to vanish uselessly upward through traditional chimney structures. The neighboring homesteaders couldn't comprehend his unusual construction project. Several expressed concern that resting above channels filled with fire exhaust posed serious health dangers. Others openly ridiculed his foreign heating contraption, predicting it would prove utterly useless against their region's notoriously harsh winter conditions. But the homesteader maintained complete confidence in what he had personally observed functioning successfully, a methodology tested and refined through thousands of years by communities enduring winters equally unforgiving as his frontier homeland. He understood that with properly engineered airflow dynamics and expertly executed brickwork craftsmanship, his adapted version of the Kang system would dramatically outperform any conventional cast iron heating stove his neighbors trusted. When the season's inaugural major snowstorm descended upon the settlement, he discovered just how spectacularly correct his calculations had been. As twilight approached, he kindled a moderate fire in the external combustion chamber, allowing flames to burn steadily for several hours, while heat slowly permeated through the brick channels beneath his sleeping platform. As darkness fell completely, he banked the fire with ash to control its gradual consumption, then settled onto his bunk for the night. The thermal mass of fired bricks beneath his bedding radiated deep, soothing warmth upward through the sleeping surface, enveloping him in gentle heat. While neighboring families repeatedly abandoned their sleep to stumble through darkness, adding more split wood to their ravenous stoves, he remained completely undisturbed, wrapped in consistent, radiant warmth that persisted hours beyond when the last visible flame had expired in his firebox. By dawn's first light, he carefully assessed the results. His body temperature had remained perfectly comfortable throughout the entire night. The cabin interior showed no trace of frost formation on interior walls or windows, and most astonishingly, he had consumed merely a small fraction of the firewood pile he'd previously required using conventional heating methods. This wasn't speculative theory or untested experimentation. This represented ancient engineering principles confronting frontier necessity head-on, and the outcome exceeded anything his isolated community had previously witnessed. The homesteader's successful adaptation of the Kang bedstove system hadn't materialized instantly or effortlessly. The achievement required patient observation during his travels, methodical trial and error during construction, and comprehensive understanding of how Asian master builders had perfected these systems through centuries of incremental improvements. In the northeastern provinces where he'd studied these platforms, Kang structures typically dominated impressive proportions, frequently extending across an entire wall of family dwellings. Construction utilized sun-baked bricks, quarried stone blocks, or thick rammed earth mixtures, materials deliberately selected for their exceptional thermal mass properties, meaning their capacity to absorb tremendous quantities of heat energy, then release it gradually over prolonged periods. The Kang's fundamental purpose was elegantly straightforward: capture maximum possible heat from combustion sources, then discharge that accumulated thermal energy slowly across many subsequent hours. This operating principle differed fundamentally from how metal stoves functioned in frontier cabins. Cast iron components heated rapidly when fires blazed, achieving scorching surface temperatures. But those same metal surfaces cooled equally rapidly once flames diminished. Consequently, whenever a settler's nighttime fire burned down to coals and ash, cabin interior temperatures plummeted swiftly, creating profound discomfort, interrupted sleep patterns, and genuine hypothermia risks, particularly threatening to elderly family members or young children. The Kang system elegantly circumvented this dangerous cycle because the heat source warming sleepers wasn't direct flame exposure, but rather the massive thermal battery of brick and clay beneath the sleeping platform, steadily discharging stored warmth throughout darkness hours. During his Asian travels, the homesteader had meticulously documented observations in detailed journals. He'd watched skilled craftsmen applying smooth clay plaster coatings across Kang's surfaces, creating completely airtight tunnel networks below that prevented smoke leakage into living spaces while maximizing heat transfer efficiency. He'd memorized how builders connected these platforms to modest cooking stoves or simple earthen fireboxes positioned outside sleeping zones. In certain villages, ingenious dual-purpose systems utilized single fires that first heated cooking pots for meal preparation, then channeled still hot exhaust gases through Kang passages before final venting outdoors. Absolutely nothing was squandered. Every calorie of thermal energy served multiple useful purposes before escaping to atmosphere. When reconstructing this concept within his frontier context, the homesteader implemented several crucial modifications. Unlike the expansive multi-person platforms common in Asian households, he required a design suited to his compact, roughly constructed cabin environment. Therefore, he scaled proportions downward substantially, building a compact rectangular structure just barely sufficient for his individual sleeping requirements. He lined the interior channel network with carefully stacked bricks and meticulously sealed every joint using clay mixed with chopped straw fibers, precisely replicating the insulating compound formulations utilized for centuries across Asian regions. One design element he preserved exactly from traditional Asian versions was the specific geometry of internal flue pathways. Rather than constructing simple straight channels that would allow heat to escape too rapidly, the homesteader engineered a serpentine winding route forcing hot combustion gases to circulate extensively, transferring maximum possible thermal energy into surrounding brick masses before exiting. This sophisticated configuration ensured the sleeping platform maintained warmth well past midnight, even from fires extinguished hours earlier. The combustion chamber itself demanded particular attention to safety and function. He constructed a small enclosed firebox, using fire brick materials capable of withstanding intense temperatures without cracking, positioned this chamber outside the immediate sleeping zone to prevent any accidental burns, and fitted it with a heavy iron door for controlling airflow into flames. From this firebox, a short insulated passage connected to the Kang's entrance portal, where hot gases began their journey through the brick labyrinth. Throughout initial testing phases, he experimented extensively with different fuel types and burning techniques. Hardwoods like oak and maple produced the longest-lasting coals that sustained heat release for maximum duration. He learned that starting fires in late afternoon, allowing them to burn robustly for 3 to 4 hours, then banking them carefully with ash covering created ideal conditions. This approach enabled thorough heat saturation of the brick mass while conserving fuel during actual sleeping hours when no active flames were necessary. Fellow settlers initially observed his construction project with profound skepticism mixed with amusement. One neighboring family patriarch openly questioned whether sleeping atop smoke-filled passages might cause gradual poisoning or suffocation during night hours. Another elderly homesteader declared that any heating system originating from foreign lands couldn't possibly withstand their particular brand of frontier cold, which he insisted was uniquely severe compared to anywhere else on Earth. A third neighbor joked that the complicated brick platform looked more like a burial mound than proper sleeping furniture, suggesting perhaps the builder was planning his own tomb. But the homesteader ignored such mockery, maintaining unwavering confidence rooted in first-hand observation of these systems functioning magnificently through winters equally brutal to his current circumstances. As autumn transitioned toward winter and temperatures began their seasonal descent, anticipation built within the small frontier community. Neighbors watched with curious interest to see whether the foreign bed stove contraption would prove viable or fail catastrophically when genuinely tested by their region's notorious cold. The homesteader himself felt no anxiety, only eager anticipation to finally enjoy the superior comfort he'd witnessed others experiencing half a world away. Time d'argent compte force. The revealing moment arrived during the first sustained cold snap of the season. Overnight temperatures plunged to depths that transformed breath into visible clouds inside inadequately heated cabins, caused water buckets to freeze solid near doorways, and sent shivers through settlers wrapped in every available blanket and animal hide. Families with conventional iron stoves rose repeatedly throughout darkness, stumbling half asleep to thrust more split wood into their ravenous fireboxes, desperately attempting to maintain minimally tolerable warmth. Meanwhile, the homesteader with his Kang bed stove experienced a dramatically different night. As evening approached, he'd kindled his external firebox with seasoned hardwood, allowing steady flames to burn throughout twilight hours. By the time full darkness enveloped the forest, his sleeping platform radiated gentle warmth from its brick mass, thoroughly saturated with accumulated thermal energy. He banked the fire carefully, reducing the flames to slowly smoldering coals that would maintain modest heat output for several more hours, then retired to his bunk. The sensation was extraordinary, like resting atop sun-warmed stone after a summer day, except this warmth persisted and intensified as he settled beneath a single wool blanket. The radiant heat rising through the sleeping platform enveloped his entire body in gentle, even comfort, completely eliminating the bone-deep chill that typically accompanied frontier winter nights. Throughout the entire darkness period, he never once awakened to tend his fire. The Kang's massive thermal battery discharged its stored energy slowly and steadily, maintaining comfortable warmth from sunset straight through to dawn's early light. When he finally rose with the sun, the platform surface still felt pleasantly warm to his touch, despite the firebox having gone completely cold hours earlier. But the truly shocking revelation came when he examined his firewood consumption. A quick calculation comparing wood used versus a typical winter night using his previous conventional stove methods revealed astounding efficiency gains. He had burned approximately 40% less fuel to achieve vastly superior comfort and uninterrupted sleep. The mathematics were undeniable. This ancient Asian heating technology dramatically outperformed modern frontier methods in every measurable category. Word of these remarkable results spread swiftly through the isolated settlement community. Curious neighbors began visiting to personally inspect the unusual heating apparatus and experience its radiant warmth firsthand. One particularly skeptical visitor who'd previously mocked the construction now wrote in his personal journal that entering the cabin felt like stepping into an oven that somehow remained pleasantly comfortable rather than oppressively hot. He described the sensation of touching the sleeping platform's surface as comparable to placing hands on stones that had absorbed intense sunshine throughout a summer afternoon. Another settler documented arriving at the cabin several hours after the fire had completely died, yet finding interior air temperatures warmer and more stable than any dwelling he'd previously entered that relied on conventional iron stoves for heating. However, the most compelling evidence emerged from careful fuel consumption tracking throughout the winter season, where typical frontier families exhausted massive quantities of split firewood each week just to maintain barely adequate warmth. The homesteader, with his Kang system, consumed substantially less than half that volume. Precise measurements demonstrated an average reduction of 60% in monthly firewood requirements, compared to neighbors using traditional heating methods. This dramatic efficiency difference represented far more than simple convenience or cost savings. It translated directly into liberation from countless hours of grueling physical labor otherwise devoted to felling trees, splitting logs, hauling wood, and stacking fuel supplies. Days upon days of back-breaking work were suddenly returned to settlers for other productive activities like improving homesteads, hunting for food, or simply resting from constant exertion. Such extraordinary efficiency stemmed directly from the Kong's fundamental engineering principles. The system intelligently channeled exhaust heat into the thermal mass beneath the sleeping surface instead of allowing it to vanish wastefully upward through traditional chimney flues. Unlike metal stoves that rapidly vented heat energy skyward at tremendous loss rates, the Kang's low-winding passages trapped and stored heat precisely where human occupants needed it most. This wasn't revolutionary new physics. It represented ancient wisdom accumulated through millennia, refined and perfected in regions where winter survival absolutely depended on extracting maximum possible value from every scrap of available fuel. As more settlers personally witnessed the Kong's superior performance, attitudes gradually shifted from mockery toward genuine interest. Though some stubborn individuals remained committed to their familiar iron stove methods regardless of evidence, numerous progressive families approached the homesteader requesting assistance designing similar bed stove systems for their own cabins. He generously shared his accumulated knowledge, patiently explaining how flue passage length affected heat retention duration, how brick thickness influenced thermal mass capacity, and how careful clay sealing prevented dangerous smoke leakage into living spaces. Several families embraced the design completely, constructing full Kong platforms beneath their sleeping quarters. Others created hybrid adaptations, combining their existing stoves with short Kang-style channels running beneath benches or smaller sleeping nooks to capture otherwise wasted heat. This cross-pollination of ideas and techniques echoed patterns historians now recognize throughout frontier development periods. Innovation frequently arrived not through isolated local invention, but rather through observation and adaptation of solutions developed in vastly different geographic and cultural contexts. An engineering concept perfected across distant continents could prove ideally suited for conditions existing thousands of miles away in seemingly unrelated environments. The Kang bed stove exemplified this principle perfectly. Quiet, remarkably simple in concept, devastatingly efficient in practice, and genuinely far ahead of contemporary frontier heating technology. As subsequent winter seasons progressed, the homesteader's successful Kang adaptation achieved legendary status throughout the expanding frontier region. His construction methods definitively proved that ancient solutions originating in distant cultures could dramatically outperform even the iron stoves that settlers had previously considered the absolute pinnacle of heating technology. Traveling fur trappers, wandering prospectors, and occasional government surveyors passing through the territory sometimes requested overnight shelter in his cabin, invariably departing amazed at the consistent warmth that persisted regardless of exterior temperature conditions. Unlike conventional metal stoves that created isolated pockets of intense heat near the firebox while leaving distant corners frigid, the Kang produced remarkably stable thermal environments throughout enclosed spaces. Its gentle, radiant warmth rose evenly from the platform's surface, effectively eliminating the dramatic temperature gradients between floor level and ceiling height that characterized most frontier dwellings. In ordinary cabins, occupants simultaneously experienced freezing feet and overheated faces, an uncomfortable paradox of poorly distributed heat. But inside this pioneer's dwelling, air temperatures remained balanced and comfortable, precisely where human bodies rested and lived. Historical records from the period describe several additional health benefits associated with Kang heating systems. Rather than breathing intensely dry, superheated air blasted off scorching metal stove surfaces. Sleepers on Kang platforms rested atop gradually warming thermal masses that maintained more natural humidity levels in surrounding air. Visitors who spent complete nights sleeping on his Kang platform frequently remarked that they awakened with clear respiratory passages and no pervasive smoke odor saturating their clothing and hair. This stood in sharp contrast to the typical frontier experience of waking with irritated sinuses and everything reeking of wood smoke from poorly vented stoves. Equally important proved the system's extraordinary durability and longevity. Many traditional Kang platforms constructed in Asian communities functioned reliably through multiple generations with only periodic minor maintenance requirements. The frontier homesteader experienced identical, impressive lifespan performance. Apart from occasional resealing of flue passage joints using fresh clay mixtures or smoothing worn surface areas, the bedstove structure required essentially zero significant maintenance or repairs throughout continuous years of regular use. The massive thermal mass that made these systems so efficient simultaneously rendered them incredibly robust. Thick brick and clay construction proved immune to cracking from rapid temperature fluctuations that routinely damaged metal stoves and completely resistant to the progressive corrosion that eventually destroyed even the finest cast iron heating equipment. A pivotal turning point in community attitudes arrived when an exceptionally severe winter descended upon the region. Temperature readings plummeted far below even the lowest depths anyone could recall from previous years, and multiple settler families found themselves desperately struggling to maintain adequate firewood stockpiles. Some households resorted to burning precious furniture items and irreplaceable wooden tools simply to generate enough heat for survival during the most brutal nights. Yet the homesteader, relying on his same modest fuel supply he'd consistently used throughout previous seasons, remained comfortably warm without crisis or desperation. His Kang system had absorbed and stored such tremendous quantities of thermal energy during early evening burn periods that he slept soundly through nights when neighboring cabins' interior temperatures dropped below freezing, despite their occupants' frantic efforts to maintain fires. This extreme survival test finally convinced even the most stubborn skeptics within the settlement. What they had initially dismissed as peculiar foreign technology, unnecessary complexity, or dangerous experimentation had proven itself unquestionably superior to their traditional methods under the harshest possible conditions. The realization that centuries-old Chinese engineering could dramatically outperform modern manufactured iron stoves fundamentally challenged their assumptions about progress and sophistication. They discovered that genuine effectiveness didn't correlate with complexity, expense, or aesthetic polish, but rather with intelligent design principles and thermodynamic efficiency. As the pioneering homesteader generously shared his accumulated expertise with interested community members, numerous additional homesteads began incorporating Kang-inspired heating systems. Local clay workers and brick makers started experimenting with specialized materials optimized for thermal mass applications. Some ambitious settlers constructed full-length heated platforms extending across entire cabin walls, creating spaces where multiple family members could sleep in shared warmth. Others built narrow heated bunk arrangements specifically for vulnerable family members like infants or elderly relatives who suffered most acutely from winter cold. A few particularly innovative households even integrated their cooking stoves directly into Kang systems, channeling hot exhaust gases from meal preparation through sleeping platform passages, exactly as northeastern Asian families had practiced for countless generations. Over subsequent years, frontier families began recognizing how this heating methodology fundamentally transformed the entire rhythm and quality of winter existence. No more rising repeatedly in darkness to stumble about feeding ravenous stoves. No more anxious nights wondering whether carefully banked fires would survive until dawn or die prematurely, leaving occupants freezing. No more exhausting weeks devoted almost entirely to cutting, splitting, and hauling firewood simply to keep pace with insatiable heating demands. The Kang system returned control of evenings and energy to families, allowing them to invest time and effort into productive activities beyond mere survival maintenance. The broader lesson, resonating throughout frontier communities, echoed a profound truth about innovation and progress. Breakthrough solutions don't always emerge from cutting-edge new inventions or expensive manufactured equipment. Sometimes, the most effective answers have existed for hundreds or even thousands of years, patiently waiting for someone sufficiently open-minded to recognize their enduring value despite unfamiliar origins. The Kang bed stove represented perfect embodiment of this principle, a technology shaped by climatic conditions, nearly identical to those characterizing many frontier settlement regions. It wasn't exotic curiosity or impractical imported luxury. It was thoroughly practical, extensively proven across centuries, and profoundly intelligent engineering applied to universal human needs. By the conclusion of his life, the pioneering homesteader had earned widespread respect throughout the territory for successfully introducing this transformative system. His carefully maintained journals recorded not boastful pride in personal achievement, but humble gratitude that circumstances had allowed him to witness Kang technology during his Asian travels, and that he'd possessed sufficient wisdom to trust knowledge forged by distant cultures rather than dismissing unfamiliar methods. His frontier cabin continued radiating warmth long after his passing. The bed stove structure remained completely functional, still reliably heating sleeping quarters each winter season, a lasting monument to cross-cultural learning and intelligent adaptation. contemporary historians examining early frontier heating methodologies frequently cite his Kang adaptation as among the most brilliantly effective low-technology thermal management strategies ever successfully implemented across the region. The system embodied elegant simplicity, proven ruggedness, and breathtaking efficiency. Its documented success powerfully demonstrated the transformative potential of cultural exchange and knowledge sharing, long before modern concepts of globalization or international cooperation existed. The Kong bed stove transcended its practical function as mere heated sleeping furniture. It represented a genuine lifeline, enabling comfortable survival through brutal winters, a bridge connecting ancient Asian wisdom with frontier American necessity, and an enduring reminder that human ingenuity and effective solutions don't belong exclusively to any single place, time period, or culture. When this particular frontier homesteader boldly chose to install that ancient Chinese heating technology beneath his sleeping bunk, he achieved far more than simply conserving firewood or improving personal comfort. He proved conclusively that brilliant ideas can traverse continents and centuries, warming not only physical structures, but enriching the broader human story through shared knowledge and mutual learning across all boundaries.